Hello BookTube, it's Allison. I'm doing my January wrap-up today. So these are all the books I read in January. I read 5 books in January, which for me is pretty solid, so I'm not mad about it. So I'm just going to jump right in. I'm going to talk a little bit about all the books I read and tell you how many stars I gave them and all that good stuff. But anyway, my first read of 2017 was A Monster Calls by Patrick Ness. And this makes you cry just as much as everyone says it does. It was so sad. It's about a little boy who's losing his mother to cancer, and this monster starts showing up at his window every night outside, and he kind of takes him, not really on adventures, but he tells him stories, and it's kind of a whole process of the kid dealing with what's happening, and he's also getting bullied at school, and he's just having a lot of problems when his parents aren't together, and his mom is so sick, and he doesn't like his grandma. It's a lot. It's really beautiful. It's sad, but it's really beautiful. Because I want to say this seems like something that's really realistic to the process of grieving. And so I'm just curious about whether or not it would hurt or help. I guess it depends on what you've been through and how sensitive you are to different things, but I feel like it could either be really helpful or possibly just make you more depressed. I don't really know. So I'm not going to say read this book, but it's a good book. I did not see the movie. I don't know if I'm going to see the movie. I might watch it when it comes out on DVD or something. I also feel like the movie trailers that I saw it looked a lot more cheerful in the movie trailers I saw than it actually is. It's not cheerful at all. It's intense and sad, and it's really, really beautiful, and it's really cathartic, I think. It's not a happy story, so, you know. Oh my god, I ugly cried so bad. Like, there's this one conversation he has with his mother, and if you've read it, you know what I'm talking about probably, and like during that conversation, I just lost my shit. I just was I was inconsolable. I could not deal with how, like, oh, so, it was so good though. So anyway, this is the first book I read this month, and so I started the year off with a very emotional read, so I gave this book 4 out of 5 stars. I guess I didn't come out of it being like, oh, I loved it. I was just like, that was really good. So I gave it 4 stars. Connor doesn't want my pity star anyway. The next book I read was 6 of Crows by Leigh Bardugo, and then of course Crooked Kingdom by Leigh Bardugo. Leigh Bardugo has become an auto-buy author for me. I'm gonna read everything she writes from now on. This was so good. I know everybody talks about how good it was. It was so good. This kind of says it. 6 dangerous outcasts, 1 impossible heist. That's what it's about. It's set in the Grisha world, but instead of being in Ravka, this is on Kerch, the island, and it's set in Ketterdam, which is like this, like a busy merchant city. It's run by the merchants, and they're like, the god they worship is like the god of commerce or something weird like that. It's about these 6 outcasts, basically. They all come from different places and have different experiences that kind of led them into this sort of life of crime, I guess you could say. And so all the characters are really, really fun, and it's really interesting getting to know them all individually because it does go into like some of their backstory and everything. And all the planning is just so intricate and really good, like all the things they plan to do and how things go wrong and how they adapt to things going wrong. It's really, really interesting, and the characters are just so good. Like, I love all of these characters so much. I would say if I had to pick a favorite, I think Nina is my favorite because she was the most fun and also has kick-ass powers. So I usually like that. But I loved all of them. Every single character in here I just loved to death. And it was so, so good. I read the second one, and it took me longer to get through this one for some reason. And I mean, it's a little longer than the first one, but it's just as good. There's even more scheming and more intricacies and more stuff going on. So it was really, really good, and I really need, there's a specific book with some specific characters that were in this book that I need them to have their own book, and I need it to happen. And I won't say who because it's kind of spoilery, I guess, but I need this book in my life. So just kind of the way this wrapped up, I feel like I mean, there's room for tons more books in this world. I think it's a really interesting world and it's really well developed. So there's tons of room for more stories, and among all the characters, you could tell more story with any of them, I think. But there's one particular set that I really want a book about them, at least one, possibly 2 or 3. But I need it in my life, and I'm hopeful that I could get it because of the way things wrapped up in here. I felt like, okay, is this a setup for what I want? It's like, all I need in my life is this story to happen. Please make it happen. So that was all nice and cryptic if you didn't read these books, but if you did read these books, you might know what I'm talking about, or you probably have a different character whose story you want. I don't know, but I need it. Also, can we talk about these pages? Like, this one especially, I like under the dust, like it's just solid black. I feel like it's so, like, I don't know. Can a book look badass? Yes, it can. I'm gonna say it. It just looks badass. I want all my books to have colored edges now. These are the things I now expect. But anyway, in case you couldn't tell, I gave both of these books 5 out of 5 stars. I loved them so much. They were so enjoyable. So I highly recommend them if you're looking for something fun and magical and awesome with badass characters who do cool things. So the next book I finished this month is Ready Player One by Ernest Cline. I say finished because I did not start it this month. I started it a while back actually, but I ended up, even though I have the physical copy, I ended up listening to the audiobook narrated by Will Wheaton. And he's a great narrator. I thought he did a good job. But I do kind of wonder if I wouldn't have liked it better if I'd read it myself. I believe I gave this 3.5 out of 5 stars. Such a cool idea. Like, if you grew up in the 80s and or you love video games, this is your new favorite book. I could not get over all the really detailed references to all things that had to do with being a nerd in the 80s. It was so much fun. I was not a nerd in the 80s. I was only alive for 1 year of the 80s. So I feel like I wasn't as close to it as somebody else might be. But I did, I got most of the references. I'm not a big gamer, so I think there were a lot of video game references that I couldn't really picture properly because he was describing them. He's very descriptive, I will say that. That was kind of the part, it was almost too descriptive for me. I don't know if it's different reading it, but at least listening to the audiobook, sometimes it just felt like he was just listing descriptions for long periods of time. The middle part of the story kind of dragged on for me. It was pretty slow for a while, or it felt slow to me just because it was a lot of, like, I guess, information dumping. Like, this world is so well crafted. Everything is so, like, it's so detailed. It's the most detailed book I think I've ever read. It's really unique, and it's a really cool idea, and it's really interesting and well done. I don't know, I wasn't crazy about it. I thought it was really good, and the end was really good. I love Will Wheaton, but I do wonder if I wouldn't have liked it better if I'd read it instead of listening to it, because for a couple of things, I did not like the way he voiced Artemis. It sounded exactly like a grown man doing an impression of a teenage girl. She was always, like, talking like this, and she was so just sarcastic and didn't have time for you because you're just so dumb. Oh my god. Like, that's how she sounded to me. I couldn't picture her any other way than hands on hips, head wobbling around. Like, that's all I pictured. And so I didn't like her as much as maybe I would have had I read things filtered through my own head, because a lot of the dialogue didn't have to be said in that tone, in my opinion. You could have interpreted it a lot of different ways, but like I said, it sounded like a grown man doing an impression of a teenage girl, and I didn't really care for it, and so it made me not really like her very much, which kind of bothered me. So I, like, wasn't invested in the whole romance plot at all, and I just kind of found it annoying, actually. But I loved H. H is probably my favorite, and I do think this is going to be a good movie. Like, if they do it right, it's going to be a really, really good movie, and it's Steven Spielberg doing it, so I can't imagine that they would get it wrong. I mean, it's got enough descriptive detail that they should be able to get the world right, And as long as they do that, and hopefully the casting is okay. I actually haven't checked the casting. No, I have, because the kid that played Cyclops in the recent X-Men movie, he is the main character. So I don't know. I thought he was good in that movie, so maybe he'll be good. Hopefully he'll be good in this. Hopefully it'll be good. But I definitely want to see the movie when it comes out. I think it'll be really, really good. I think this would lend itself well to being a movie adaptation. So the last book I read this month was Trueborn by L.E. Sterling, and this was really interesting. It's about these two twin sisters who are in this, I guess it's kind of a dystopian world where a plague has wiped out a lot of humanity, and so the upper class people will pay to have their genes spliced so that they won't catch the disease, I guess. They have some kind of like genetic coding that they do, and when you turn 18 they tell you how long you've got, is how I interpreted it. Like they tell you how much longer until you die basically, or just whether or not, I don't really know. See, that's the thing. But anyway, so there are the people who have enough money to splice their genes, there are the people who don't have enough money and are just kind of hanging out, seeing how long they can go, I guess. And then there are also trueborns. The trueborns, for whatever reason, are immune to whatever this plague is. So there's a lot of ideas about it being evolution, but the trueborns all have some kind of specific, not really a power, but they have kind of these abilities, and they transform into like half human, half animal things. And I don't really know how else to say it. So these two twin girls live in this world and have to find out which one they are, and they kind of meet these other characters. Does this make any sense? I honestly, this was my problem with this book. I don't even know how to tell you what this was about. It just wasn't that good. The story had a lot of potential. Okay, I can't explain the plot. I'll read what it says. Welcome to Dominion City. After the Great Plague descended, the world population was decimated and their genetics damaged beyond repair. The lasters wait hopelessly for the genes to self-destruct. The splicers pay for expensive treatments that might prolong their life. The plague-resistant trueborns are as mysterious as they are feared. And then there's Lucy Fox and her identical twin sister Margot. After endless tests, no one wants to reveal what they are. When Margot disappears, a desperate Lucy has no choice but to put her faith in the trueborns, including the charismatic leader Nolan Storm, and the beautiful but deadly Jared, who tempts her as much as he infuriates her. As Lucy and the trueborns set out to rescue her sister, they stumble upon a vast conspiracy stretching from Dominion street preachers to shady Russian tycoons. But why target the Fox sisters? As they say in Dominion, it's in the blood. See, doesn't that sound cool? It sounded so cool. I was like, oh, I love, conspiracy stuff, and people with different abilities, and I don't know, things like that. It's a cool idea. It did not, I was reading that plot just now thinking, this sounds awesome. Why wasn't it awesome? It just wasn't awesome. It just didn't make a lot of sense. The world wasn't put together very well. There were no parameters to work within. There was no real world building. She just kind of drops you in, and they use all the lingo, and you're supposed to catch on, which a lot of the time I feel like other books do that, where you have to kind of catch up. But I don't know what I'm catching up to. It's like during the whole book, all these characters had inside jokes with each other that I was on the outside of, and I didn't get it. And so a lot of the book just wasn't very enjoyable, because I was just like, I don't know what they're talking about. It kept feeling like she would say these sentences that would be supposed to build intrigue, and I know that's what they were for, but then nothing ever came of them. She set it up and then just left it there. and you end up forgetting about half of the things she says that I guess are supposed to be foreshadowing, but you forget about them because you're just trying to figure out what's going on. It just wasn't great. I feel like, and I think I gave this 3 stars. What was I thinking? I don't know. I'm gonna have to take off a star, I think, because it just wasn't very good. I mean, it was like, it was a great idea, I thought. I thought it was a very good idea. It just wasn't, it didn't work out well. And I didn't like any of the characters enough to be all that invested in it. I wanted to know what was happening. Obviously it was interesting enough that I kept reading and I finished the book, but it felt like this might be like just kind of a setup like for a story that might be better. I feel like the sequel has potential and it comes out in April, so... But anyway, it's supposed to be a trilogy. I'm not 100% sure if I'll read the next one or not. Like I said, I think I'm gonna go back on Goodreads and take another star off because now that I'm talking about this book, I'm like, I have nothing good to say about this. That's not good. Except that it was a good idea. It had potential. It just wasn't built well. But anyway, so that was kind of a bummer to end my reading month, but I think the Six of Crows duology more than made up for it, you know. You can't win them all. They're not all gonna be amazing books. But yeah, so those are all the books I read in January, so that's the wrap-up. I hope you enjoyed hearing me talk about books. I like to talk about books. I'll be back to talk about books. This is not my catchphrase, I just keep saying it. I'm not trying to have a catchphrase, I promise. I'm just awkward, I don't know what to say. But yeah, thanks for watching, I hope you had fun. I had fun, I love to talk about books, so I had fun. Alright, bye!